I'm Doug Thompson. Welcome to this edition of Legislative Updates with John Barker of the Kansas House of Representatives for the 70th District. Most of us get our information concerning the actions of the Kansas legislature either from some form of media or after the fact, as the legislation either became law or died during the process. Representative John Barker has graciously agreed to take time from his schedule to update pending legislation as the bills are moving through committee to consideration by the House of Representatives. Right after this short break, let's talk with Representative John Barker concerning this week in the Kansas legislature. Welcome to Legislative Updates. I'm your host, Doug Thompson, with special guest John Barker. And today, John, you have brought out another special guest.
I have. I brought a good friend, a representative from southeast Kansas, from Frontenac, Adam Lusker. Adam is a Democrat representative from that area. You've been in the House, I think, 5 years now, right?
Just about a year less than you, I believe.
Yeah, a year less, and we've been friends and
ever since.
And we're still friends.
Yeah.
Well, and I can see why. I mean, I can really see why, because as I looked at your background, Adam, about the fact that you're into hunting and fishing and the outdoor activities, and so is John, and that's awesome. And then you have a masonry business too, don't you?
Right.
How long have you had that?
Almost 25 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Since I was about 22 or so.
Well, how'd you decide to get into the legislature?
Well, I was asked, to be honest with you. I was on the school board in Frontenac, and I'd been involved in several community organizations, and the gentleman that was ready to retire said, "Hey, I think you'd be really good at this job." And he'd asked about 100 people before me that turned him down. I was the first one that said yes.
So he was kind of running out of people in the town, huh?
Bob Grant, the gentleman I took this way. And or trying to replace anyway.
Well,
he did me a favor.
Well,
he did enjoy the legislature.
I'm glad you're there. You know, John's brought in a lot of guests. Every one of those individuals that have come in, I've been so impressed with their desire to do a good job, with what they've done in their private life as far as business and how they're doing those things. And it's just absolutely fantastic to see. I've just really been impressed with it. And I was looking at the committees that you're on. We'll come back to that in a little bit. But I want to catch up with John on this matter, because he was on the front page of the Topeka Daily Capital today in regards to the statute with Eisenhower. John, fill us in.
Oh, well, we've had a busy week in committee and Federal and State Affairs, where I chair. But on Tuesday, we had a number of people from Abilene come in and testify on Senate Bill 262, which would allow a statue of Dwight David Eisenhower, Kansas's most favorite son, to be built on the northwest quadrant of the Capitol grounds. We passed it out of committee on Tuesday, and then I carried the bill on the floor of the House yesterday, and it was well received. We had no votes.
I believe it was all green.
122 to 0.
Our board was all green.
Yeah, it was all green. So that paved the way. The governor has indicated that he wanted that to be the first bill that he signs, Governor Collier. And hopefully, I'm working with him to try to get him to come to Abilene, to the Eisenhower Library, and do an official signing sometime, hopefully, within the next week or so.
Oh, that would be great. This is always a good time when I get to share my Eisenhower story. John's heard it half a dozen times, but when I was a little kid, I was attending school at Grandview Plaza in Junction City, and Dwight Eisenhower always had a good habit of taking care of the local ones, especially the kids. And so I had front row seat with the dedication of the library, and I was from Glenda's running the camera, so I was 8-10 feet away from him. And of course I knew even at that age that he had been a war general and that he was the president. And then later I got to be in his honor guard for the funeral. I got called up to be that. I was in the military then, and back to the guards, and so that's my claim to fame with Eisenhower.
Eisenhower story.
And I got a degree in history, so I have studied a lot of his work. The last balanced budget, as I recall, at the presidential level. And just a tremendous person. If you haven't had a chance to go through Eisenhower Center in Abilene, you go through there and you will see the influence that his mother had upon him and the rest of the boys, because they studied the Bible. They were just good, solid people.
Yeah. And one brother was the president of K-State University, and one brother was a pharmacist in Junction City. I mean, very successful family. Impressive. And you're right, the mother was the dominant factor there.
Oh, yeah, just tremendous.
So,
just tremendous.
But that's usually true in all families.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well,
it is.
was.
You're right.
But when I was carrying the bill, Doug, I talked about a story and if you'll remember that, you were in the House.
All right.
About when Eisenhower left office, Mamie had bought him a Chrysler Imperial. Remember those big 1958 Chrysler?
Big fins.
When he left the presidency, he drove him and Mamie back to Pennsylvania. The Secret Service followed them. When they got to their residence, the Secret Service got out, shook hands, and said, "Thank you, Mr. President," turned around and drove back to Washington because he was not entitled to Secret Service protection at that time.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
That was something that came about probably after Kennedy assassination.
After Kennedy
Yeah.
assassination.
Yeah, and I know, of course, at the library there's tapes you can hear interviews not interviews, but conversations between him and John Kennedy, where John Kennedy reached out during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and interesting. If you haven't been through that before, Adam,
I actually have.
Have you?
We were up in Abilene
Your
last
son,
summer.
with your son. Yeah, he became a football player.
Sports publication, and they did it at the Eisenhower Library.
Oh, awesome.
Really neat.
We got to cut away and take our first break. You're watching Legislative Updates. We'll be back after these commercial breaks. Welcome back to Legislative Updates. I'm your host, Doug Thompson, with John Barker and Adam Lusker. And Adam, you're out of the 2nd District, which is Crawford County,
Correct.
and just barely in the state of Kansas, isn't it?
Well, don't forget about us.
I'm only kidding. It's down in the, of course, you have Crawford County's a nice area, and the town you're out of?
Frontenac, Kansas.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
a
it's a
town of
beautiful
about
area.
3,300 people.
Yep. Okay, and you've been in the legislature since 2013.
Correct.
Okay.
My first session was the 2014 session.
All right, and of course, John's from the 70th District. And John, where do you want to go today? Because you're finishing up, is this 5 weeks now with the
5 weeks,
legislature? 5 weeks.
End of 5 weeks. Next week, Federal and State Affairs has a number of hearings. Of course, one that's very important to our area and Adams area is the House Bill 2545, which has to do with expand the lottery and gaming, which brings back the horse and dog tracks back to Kansas. I mean, it will have a great economic effect on the state of Kansas in general, but more specifically in this area, you know, it could bring back the 400 jobs we've lost since 1993, 94, when we had dog racing. I know Frontenac has a dog track in your area.
We do. We have one right in town.
And it has an economic impact in your area.
Huge impact.
Huge.
Yeah.
We're thinking it will probably create 4,500 jobs in the state, 400 in central Kansas, plus throughout the state, Wichita area, the Kansas City area, which would open the woodlands for thoroughbreds and quarter horses.
Correct.
But Adam, tell me what it's going to do, how it will affect Crawford in that area.
Well, we hope it's a statewide effect, really. And what our bill essentially does is right a wrong that was written back in the 2007. Parimutuel gaming has been around, I think, since the early 90s.
Right.
And back in, I think, 2007, we passed laws in the state of Kansas to allow 4 state-owned casinos, and the racinos are the racing facilities with slot machines. The only problem at the racinos is that the percentage of the hold on the slot machines is greater than those of the casinos. So right now, as the law is written, the racino, both the Woodlands in Kansas City, Frontenac Greyhound Park, or Camptown Greyhound Park in Frontenac, and then Wichita Greyhound, all would have to send 40% of their slot hold to the state, where the casinos only have to send 22, and that's the problem, and that's essentially what our bill does. I mean, racing's legal in Kansas now. It's without the help of the slot machines, it's just not workable. Exactly.
And it was Senate Bill 66 that did that, and it was put in at the very last minute. But the percentages,
like a lot of bills.
Like a lot of bills, if the percentages were the same as the state-run casinos, we could open up. They could operate. They would hire those employees back. It's not whether or not you're for gaming. It's that we have that in the state of Kansas.
Right.
But we don't build any slot machines in Kansas. But we sure enough raise greyhounds, and we raise thoroughbreds, and we raise quarter horses.
And we raise the products that feed them.
And we raise the products that feed them.
And make it here in the state of Kansas.
And veterinary services, we got one of the best vet schools in the nation at Kansas State University.
Right.
And it would be nice to be able to bring that sport back and help the entire economy throughout the state.
It's around 5,000 jobs total for all the 3 facilities, and there's a track in Eureka, Kansas, Eureka Downs. They'll benefit from it, so they race quarter horses in Eureka, and they'll get a percentage of the gaming revenues from the other 3. They won't have the same gaming there, but they'll still be able to run the horses.
But
there.
they've been running horses there for 100. I think
Yeah,
Larry
but it's been shut down. Right.
Larry Hilbert, the representative from that area, Adam and myself are the ones that continues to introduce this bill every year.
Yeah.
And we would like to see it come about because it would help Eureka Downs, where they've raced horses for 120 years or whatever it's been, and bring it back to central Kansas and to Kansas City area. And we're just asking the casinos in this that, you know, to have an equal ability to pay the same rate that they pay. You know, in Oklahoma they have 7 racetracks. They have
hundreds of casinos, and they operate. It's a $3 billion business.
$3
Just
billion.
horse racing in Oklahoma alone is a $3 billion industry, and they compete every day with. You know, I am from deep southeast Kansas, so we're not very far away from the Oklahoma border, and there's several Indian-owned casinos along the border, and they coexist pretty well. So, you know, we're just trying to create parity. That's what this bill does. So everybody pays the same percentage of tax, basically.
Okay, well, let me go back over just a little of this so I'll be sure that I understand it. We know this, that the Greyhound Hall of Fame is in Abilene, and there's lots of training facilities, and this has been something I've heard for many, many years is Kansas doesn't have the dog racing, yet they have the base for the training, the home base for many of these people, and they're shipping dogs out and training them in maybe in Abilene, but then taking them to other states to race them. Am I right about that?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And so what this would, and I'm assuming the same's true for the horse racing, that
Correct.
there's,
Yep.
I'm just not familiar with those,
Right.
but I'm assuming it's the same thing. So what's happening is here's some work being done here, but then the real profit from it is being gathered out of other states.
Correct.
And so the plan for this is to be able to make it available for Kansas and to create about 4,500 jobs. Is that
Right.
Statewide, yeah.
Statewide.
Okay. And we do have the National Registry for greyhounds for the nation located
In
between
Abilene.
Abilene and Solomon.
That's right.
And where they have the track. And I'm always fearful that they're going to get up and move. They've been here since 1946, I believe, or in that area. So to lose that, then we lost the National Registry. We're going to probably lose more of the greyhound business.
And we have a great greyhound history in Kansas. In Girard, Kansas, where one of the first racing trials was held in the 1800s. So this is nothing new to Kansas. We just want to hopefully get it to where it'll work for everybody.
Well, when we come back from break, I want to ask you about that 22% thing. We're going to cut away and take a break. You're watching Legislative Updates. Welcome back to Legislative Updates. I'm your host, Doug Thompson, visiting with Representative John Barker and Adam Lusker. And we're talking about right now, before we cut away to break, and then as break continued, we were talking a little about is it called the gaming bill? Or is there a different name? Am I using the wrong?
It's called the Kansas Expanded Lottery Act regarding racetrack gaming is the official name of the bill.
Okay. All right. And we were talking before we cut away to break about the 40% and the 22%, and then how this computes into creating jobs and bringing money into the state.
Adam?
Well, just to be clear on the 40 to 22, that's on the slot machines only. Like I was mentioning earlier, in 2007, they allowed the slot machines at the racetracks, calling them racinos. So currently the state-owned casinos, they send 22% of their revenue from a slot machine into the state, and the racetracks have to send in 40. If we can get that to 22, that will create enough revenue, sort of, and I hate to use the word subsidize the racing, but it does subsidize the racing in effect. What the racing does is draw people from out of the state of Kansas, not just that 100-mile radius around that casino, to come in and watch another sporting venue. And that's what's exciting about it. We've had some resistance from the state-owned casinos, quite frankly, because they don't want to share the profits. But, you know, as John and I have explained, we think it'll be a draw for Kansas, a draw into those areas, because those 4 gaming zones that are established by statute. And so as people come in from from, let's say, Nebraska or Iowa, or just to watchdog racing, it's new money coming into the state of Kansas, not just churning those same dollars.
Exactly. And when you talk about, if you only wanted 4 casinos in the state, then Vegas, how do they get along with so many?
Yeah.
Or how does Oklahoma get along with 7 racetracks, plus all their casinos? It become more of a destination, and that's what we want. We want people to come in.
A draw, if you will.
A draw. And have them, give them another option rather than just play slot machines. They can watch the dogs or the horses. The horse racing business is a very good business. It's from Kentucky on down. They have a circuit. They don't run, their circuit's not as long as the dogs, but the dogs, we project you can run 50 weeks a year in Wichita.
Wow.
And then they could do a circuit in
Frontenac, yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think I understand that, and so obviously that's going to generate a lot of money coming into the state, because right now, common sense would tell me if I want to see horse racing, dog racing, I'm going out of state to do it.
And you're taking your money with you.
And taking my money with me, so I'm spending it over there, and then I'm coming back.
Exactly. Something we didn't mention that we probably ought to mention, there's one owner of these 3 facilities. We have, like I said, the Woodlands in Kansas City, Wichita Greyhound Park, and Frontenac. One gentleman owns all 3 facilities and has the means and the capital for the private investment to get these open and to do this project.
And he's a Kansan.
And he's a Kansan, yeah, absolutely.
He's a Kansan. He's willing to do that. He's projected he'll spend $240 to $300 million just to get the facilities back up to where they're ready to run. And then he would be required by the state to pay what we call a privilege fee to get a license, and on each machine or slot machine, he would pay a privilege to have that and pay the amount there. So he could write another check for $100 million, plus the annual revenue that the state would get.
It's around $23 million in tax revenue alone for income tax off, the employees.
And he would pay taxes. I like the state.
Absolutely. Everything that goes in there is going to be taxed. I'm not sure either.
I'm not sure they pay property taxes, but these would.
And speaking of property taxes, right now, and John and I have been working on this bill since I've been in the legislature, but the city of Frontenac or the Crawford County receives about $17,000 in total property taxes from Camptown Greyhound Park. This would bump it up to nearly $2 million in total property taxes that'll be split between the county, city, and the school district. Right. So it's a huge benefit for our county and for all 3 counties that these places are in.
And that's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money.
$17,000 to $2
Absolutely.
million.
Well, you get something open and it has a little more value.
Right.
Wow, that's a lot of money. Well, that's going to be interesting. When will that work its way through so you'd know the result, or is that hard to tell?
We're going to do the hearing on it Tuesday. We've got a number of people coming in, both proponents and opponents. Sometime after that, it will be what we call ready to work. It may be amended, it may not be amended, and if it passes out of committee, it passed out of committee last year. Then we'll run it on the floor of the House. If we get it passed, then we'll run it to the Senate. And the Senate has a bill already sitting in the Senate from last year that we could probably amend and make it very similar to this bill. But we've worked on it. We've put a lot of hours in this last year.
We really have. A lot of folks have.
And I would always suggest, if you're not opposed to it, folks, I would suggest you call your local representatives and encourage them to support that. I mean, we have people who raise greyhounds out in Hays, Kansas. We have people that raise quarter horses all over the state of Kansas. And the thoroughbreds, of course, they're raised in the state of Kansas. I know one constituent told me who has quarter horses and races them in Oklahoma. He said, John, if you get this passed, I will bring all my quarter horse brood mares back home along with my trainers. And that's someone that lives in Dickinson County that told me that.
Well, that's tremendous. That's tremendous. And John, you've been on kind of a roll right now with getting bills through with almost no opposition. So are you pretty confident on this one?
This will have a little bit more opposition than the last one.
This one will have a little bit from both sides of the aisle.
Yeah, I'm afraid so.
It's a bipartisan bill. I mean, Adam and I have worked with it. We have a number of members of his party that are supporting very supportive of it.
Right.
We have a number of members of my party. Probably the representatives that have casinos in their area, those casinos are probably encouraging them to oppose us.
The biggest opposition comes from the state-owned casinos, and then the Humane Society of the United States has a little opposition to dog racing.
Right.
Not horse racing, but dog
But
racing.
they also have opposition to cattle racing.
Yeah, cattle raising.
Raising,
Yeah.
raising,
Yeah,
raising.
and eating beef.
Oh.
So-
Yeah, so that's just
Okay.
the way it goes.
All right, we're going to cut away and take a break. We'll be right back. You're watching Legislative Updates. Welcome back to Legislative Updates. I'm your host, Doug Thompson. You're coming into it to our last segment. So if you haven't been watching, why, we're sorry you've missed an awful good one, but you'll be able to catch it on the rebound and you'll be able to see it. John, where do you want to go to now?
Well, I just want to remind people that we have live broadcasting on the internet. You go to the Kansas Legislature, House of Representatives, and you can check on Federal and State Affairs Committee and click on, and you can actually see as well as hear our committee hearing on Tuesday. Of course, you can turn it on any day at 9 o'clock, and if we're meeting, you'll be able to watch what goes on at the Capitol. The proper term today is transparency.
Absolutely.
Adam?
Just to kind of chime in with what John's saying, you can watch any of the committees on the Senate or the House side. So if you'd like to follow online, and if you're not doing anything else at 9 o'clock in the morning, this might be a good thing to watch. But I also, we do a little radio show, and we were going to talk a little bit about the new governor. And before John chimes in, I know he's possibly coming to do this show, but
I think he's coming to your show.
yeah, he is. He's going to be on ESPN1007.com with me one of these days, he promised, and I think it'll be a new day for Kansas. My brother asked me, he sent me a text when he got the job, is this a good day or a bad day for Kansas? I said, it's a new day, and I truly believe that. So.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. Now, we're going to put all the contact information up on the screen so that you can see it, and you can go check out the hearings online, and you'll be able to even listen to the radio program that Adam's going to be doing. And Adam, thank you so much
Doug,
for
thank
being
you
here.
very much for
I know
having me.
it's a long trip for you, but we
I don't
really
mind at all.
appreciate it. And John, as always,
Yeah,
appreciate
Beautiful
the
state.
fact
Thanks,
that
buddy.
Thank you for having me, John.
Yeah, appreciate the
Appreciate
fact that you always bring out people with you, John, and it is so nice. I get this all the time from people who say it is so nice to be able to hear exactly what's going on when it happens because it comes in fresh. Hope you've enjoyed Legislative Updates. Thanks for watching.